we are a little bit early. I'm very German. So I'm still going to wait a few minutes and give people some time to arrive. And yeah, let's see who else is going to join us. Feel free to also share your your video and your audio if you like. And yeah, we're going to get started in a second. All right, well, enjoy. Don't worry. I'll be having my eyes on the chat as well. What are you having for dinner? Ooh, that's an odd combination, isn't it? But okay, enjoy. Hi, welcome as well. That's true. You're very right. Gotta get creative here. Okay, I was just saying we're going to be starting in a minute. I'm just giving some more people time to arrive. But I'm happy to see you guys here and have you with me. If you have any questions, please feel free to either unmute yourself or also pop the questions in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on the chat while I give the presentation, but for sure I'm going to be coming back to it after the presentation. And yeah. All right, it's 6 o'clock. German, huh? Right on time. So we'll see if somebody else is going to join us, but I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, guys. I'm very happy that you're here with me. My name is Romina, and I'm an underwater photographer and underwater photography coach. And today I want to share some tips with you on macro photography. And there's so many different subjects for macro that we can really be exploring and photographing. And today specifically, we're going to have a look at nudibranchs and why they are such great subjects, especially also for beginners, why they're so great to get started with underwater photography. But of course, nudibranchs are also really fascinating for advanced photographers. Yeah, and we're going to be learning a little bit more about those crazy colored sea slugs. So let's dive right into it. Is it working? Second. Yes, slide is just a little slow. Okay, now it went too far. All right, so when I got started with underwater photography, my first pictures looked like this. So I know how hard it is to get started with underwater photography and how overwhelming it can be. And I mean, yeah, those shots are not really that great, let's be honest. They're ID shots at best to maybe document what you saw on your dive. But because it is so hard, and for me, it took a very long time to understand underwater photography and how to take better pictures underwater, I want to share some of my knowledge with you so that hopefully for you, it's not going to take that long to make some progress. And I want to show you how you can achieve pictures like that really like draw the viewer in a little bit more and yeah, grab the viewer's attention a little bit more. So we'll be looking into that today. So a very quick introduction about myself for those of you who don't know me yet. My name is Romina, and as I said, I'm an underwater photographer. In the last few years, I've been living in Indonesia on a very tiny little island in the north of Sulawesi on Silan Island, which is absolutely stunning and some of the best diving in the world, I would say. So incredible opportunities for macro, wide-angle photography, reef life. It's just amazing. So if you ever have the chance, please go ahead and visit that place if you haven't been yet. So that was really cool for me to be able to photograph so many different critters over there. But also we had many guests that came back from the dives really disappointed with their pictures because they just couldn't make the pictures look as amazing as they were hoping to. And so I want to inspire people to share their passion for the ocean with basically anybody that they know, because I think photography is a really, really cool tool to show people what is down there, all the mysteries that we have down there. And often pictures are able to touch somebody's heart much more than just words can. And so I think it's a really great tool that we can use to share our passion for the oceans. And so I want to share my learnings with you and any underwater photographers so that you can learn how to take better pictures underwater. And this is why I founded OceanSnaps also. So enough about me. Before we get started with all the macro stuff and the Nudibranchs specifically, I want to give you some general underwater photography tips, because it is very easy to go down with your camera and forget about everything else and just concentrate on your camera. But of course, the prerequisite really to get started with underwater photography is buoyancy control, because when we're down there, with the camera, we need to be controlling our buoyancy without even thinking about it. So we need to be able to really control everything with our breathing, basically, without having to touch anything. Yeah, so hopefully we all learned that in our open water course, that down there we don't want to be touching anything, we only want to be looking. And the same goes when you're taking pictures. So stabilize yourself with your breath by breathing really slowly. But don't just lie down on the reef. And also when you approach a subject in order to take a picture, be aware of your surroundings. So check first what's in the area. Are you able to approach safely without causing any damage? Is there maybe coral under you that you might accidentally be touching? So be very careful about this. Think about this also, and don't just rush in to take your picture. The next, we want to be patient, and the more patient you are in underwater photography, it's really going to pay off, because then sometimes you're going to be able to witness some incredible behavior, some incredible moments that you can only witness if the fish, your subjects, are relaxed really. So give them some time to get used to you as well. Take your time as well. Think about your shots instead of just rushing in and snapping the first nudibranch that your guide shows you and then rushing off to the next. So think about it, take your time, and it's okay to stay for a while with one subject, still limiting your shots, but at least giving the animals some time to get used to you. And that also brings me to the next point, which is knowing your subject. The more you're going to know about your subject, the better photo opportunities you're going to get as well. Because if you know how the fish behave or what certain behavior they can display, then first of all, you can look for those behaviors, and with being patient, you can also wait for this kind of behavior sometimes. And so like this, sometimes you're going to have really incredible opportunities that you wouldn't get otherwise if you just rush into it, basically. Okay, so today I'm hoping to bring you nudibranchs a little bit closer and tell you a little bit more about them so that you're able to take better shots of nudibranchs. So what are nudibranchs? Why are they so cool? Where do they come from? What can they do? Nudibranchs are incredibly, there's such a big variety, right? They come in every possible color and shape and form. And some of them have real superpowers as well. So here you can see there's really hundreds and thousands of them. And they're a little bit like Pokemon that you really want to be collecting them all. And now you can with your pictures by taking pictures of them. So it's a little bit like this sticker album, right? Where you say, oh, have you seen that one already? And there's even one nudibranch that's named after the Pokemon, the Pikachu nudibranch, the Serrata. So you can see this one here on the right in the middle. It's a yellow and black one. So that is called the Pikachu nudibranch as well. And then some of them have really cool superpowers as well, like, for example, the Costaciela. So the Costaciela, also called Shaun the Sheep, is the little green one on top of the Pikachu. And that one, for example, can live from solar power. So they absorb the sunlight, and then for several months, they can live only from that energy without having to feed on anything else. So, I mean, that's quite amazing, right? So what else makes them so special as subject is that they belong to snails. So that means they're really, really slow. So if you're just getting started here, you can really take your time with the shots, think about it, how you want to compose your image, and then, yeah, get creative and fire away, basically. Yeah. But a little bit more about the nudibranchs. So even though they're so colorful, they cannot really see those colors, which is really a shame if you think about it. So they do have eyes, and they're in the middle of their head, the two black little dots that you can see over here. But with those eyes, they can basically just detect light and shadow. So it's really nothing much more than that. And yeah, they use it for basic orientation. But instead, what they have something called Rhino Force. So the Rhino Force are located on the heads. So those two little feelers kind of here. And those Rhino Force, they're incredibly sensitive to smell for once, and also for the ocean current. So this is really much more how they navigate. They use those Rhino Force to use that. And then depending on the type of nudibranch, they also have some, or might have some oral tentacles, like this Flablina over here, and sometimes also some propodial tentacles. So with all those feelers, it's basically how they orientate themselves along the ocean floor. And you might have heard already that in underwater photography, when you're taking pictures of a fish, you want to have the focus on the eye of the fish. Well, for nudibranchs, this is going to be the Rhino Force. So you want to put your focus on the Rhino Force of the nudibranch. Okay, let's have a look at a little bit more photo tips. So here you have two different shots of a tampta. And on the left one, you can see there is, hi Simon, welcome. So on the left side, you can see this picture is really taking down on a downward angle, and you can see a lot of the background is also in the picture. It's very bright in the background as well, and the background is not really adding anything to my picture. It's not really telling a story, or it's really distracting from the nudibranch itself. There's also some backscatter in the picture. There's some sand flying around. So overall, yeah, you can see it's a nudie. Again, it's maybe an ID shot to remember which nudie you saw, but it doesn't have that much impact. On the other hand, on the right side, you can see that the tampta is really like leaning into the picture. And if you get lower, so if you get at eye level, it's my little Nimbrota over here. If you get at eye level or even a little bit lower, then you can often achieve a little bit more impact in your picture by shooting it from a different angle. So I would recommend that you try this out. Of course, again, be careful if it's possible. So check the surroundings in front of you if it's possible to get at that angle. And many times it won't be possible. So again, maybe you're patient and the nudie is going to move into a better position so that then you're able to shoot in this angle. But maybe it won't be possible at all. And then it's okay to say no as well. This is also really important if you want to be a responsible underwater photographer, to miss out on purpose on photo opportunities if it would mean like risking a damage, for example, to a coral. Yeah. So sometimes it's okay not to take the picture and just enjoy the dive without it. But yeah, so try to get at eye level or rhinophore level in this case, or even a little bit lower. And here you just have two different examples again from this. So you can be shooting then from a frontal position or from the side also. But this gives you the chance to separate the nudie a little bit more from the background and really put the focus on the nudie itself. Then there will be other situations where maybe you want to have the background in your picture, because the background might be telling a story itself. It can tell a story also about the surrounding that the nudie is living in, for example. So here on the left side, you have another example of the Tessacera. And this one, it was basically sitting inside this cup coral when I found it. So I thought this was already straight away, I had in my head like a nudie in a cup, and I thought that's already a story by itself. So I really wanted this coral also to be there in the picture. And on the right side, you can see a Nimbrota cubariana. So 6 years of Latin really paid off here. So for this one, they're really cool because of the colors, right? So they have this really bright neon orange in contrast with this dark green, basically, which is really a very nice color. And the background here is basically the same colors in a slightly softer version, right? So this is why I wanted to have the background here in the picture, because I thought it was really adding to it. And as you can see, sometimes the angle of shooting down can still be okay. So it's really going to depend on the situation, and also, your personal taste and your creativity. So rules are also there to break them sometimes. And if you can achieve more impact like this or tell a different story, so don't be afraid to experiment with different techniques as well. Here I have two other examples for the color contrast. So on the left side, hi Richard, welcome. On the left side, you can see the Ceratosoma, and I thought the green algae that it's on, it really made a very nice color contrast here with the soft pink of the nudibranch. So I wanted to have this a little bit in the picture as well. And on the right side, the Chromodoris, you can see the yellow of it is also reflected in the background. So I wanted to bring this back in the picture as well. And of course, here the background is blurry because I didn't want it to be too dominant either. But this sometimes can give your picture also a different story or a different impact than just having the black background. So try different things basically and see what's going to work in that situation. If you want to get rid of the background, so to speak, because maybe the background is very distracting and it's not really adding anything to your picture, then what you can try to do is achieve this black background. So in order to do so, you need to be aware of the position, and it's not always going to be possible, but basically you need to get lower than your subject and be shooting it like at the lower angle. And you need to make sure that behind the subject, there's only the blue ocean basically. So like this, you can achieve a black background without the light falling on it also. And sometimes this is going to be the best option in order to separate your subject from the background. Here we have the Doto Nudibranch, and I brought three different examples. So the first one on the left, you can see this is the kind of frontal shot that we already saw before also. But you can also think about what makes your subject special. So what is their characteristics? And for this one, for the Doto, it's also taking its name, the donut nudibranch, from the kind of rings or circles that it has on its back. And this really just, how do you say it in English? Well, you can really see that the most if you take the picture slightly pointing down. So we said earlier, pointing down is not always the best choice in underwater photography, but sometimes it's what works best, depending on your subject and the situation as well. And here I thought it was quite cool because it's also sitting in the middle of the star, and so it's also a different composition, right? Another example for the background. So you have 2 times the Flablina Nudibranch here. And what makes the Flablina so special is their big serrata, right? So on the left side, you have a lot of distracting really background that's making the picture very chaotic. You have a lot of this green algae that's not telling any story. It's not adding anything to my picture. It's really hard to distinguish the nudie also from the background almost. And so then if you're patient, sometimes the nudie is going to move into a better position. And hi, Caroline. And like this, you're going to be able to achieve a better picture composition-wise, right? And for example, here, yes, it's a different Flablina, but this one was just moving along the reef, basically. And when it came to those tunicates that it's on, I thought that was making, again, a very nice color contrast. So with the bright pink that you have and the green of the tunicates, and separating it from the background so that there's not so much distracting background around, also achieved me to make it more clear what the subject is, right? So speaking about those Flabllinas, so the Flabllinas, they belong to the aerolites. And what makes those ones so special is their serrata. So those are basically those big, long lines almost on their back. And for once, they use them for breathing. So they can breathe through those serrata. But on the other hand, they also use them as a defense mechanism, which is really, really cool if you think about it. So they are feeding on, for example, hydroids and cnidarians. And so when they eat them, they can incorporate those stinging cells into their own body. And on the tip of those serrata, you can see this very tiny orange point, basically. And this one is called a cnidosac. So this is where they store all the stinging cells. And so if anything attacks the nudie or touches the nudie, they will release those stinging cells and defending themselves. So that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. But for us as divers and underwater photographers, this is also really cool because they're so colorful, right? And so it's just beautiful to look at. And now we're coming back to the point of patience once and knowing a subject. So if you know those things about the nudies, if you know that they're crawling along the reef floor like this, and every now and then they're going to use the Rhino Force and the propodial tentacles to orientate and feel out where they need to go, then you're going to know that every now and then they're going to do exactly this movement. So it's almost like a horse. It always makes me think of a horse that goes onto its back legs. And in that moment, all those serrata, they're basically really just swaying in the current. And this is really when they're like the most beautifully exposed, I think. And so this is making for a really great photo opportunity because it's also bringing more dynamic into your picture, and you can really see all those serrata, yeah? Instead of sometimes if you're shooting down, you won't be able to actually see them so well. Yes. Another really cool photo opportunity is behavior in general in animals, and one of them is mating, of course. So nudibranchs are actually hermaphrodites. So that means that they have both sexes, but they can't inseminate themselves. So they do need a partner. And when they find one, they're always lining up like head to tail in this position that you can see here, because their penises are on the right-hand side of their body. And then they will have mating rituals, and it's depending on the species there. Like some of them can be just a few seconds, others can last up to several hours, supposedly. And then what happens is that both of the individuals are inseminated, and both of them will lay some eggs. And what this looks like is like this. So maybe you've already seen on your dives on the reef those like really colorful ribbon-like strands. Most likely those were nudibranch eggs. Yeah, so from this they have like several million eggs, again, depending on the species. And from this is what the so-called veliger larva is going to hatch. And then it's going to drift along the ocean for some time until it settles down somewhere on the sea ground again. And from there the new generation of nudibranchs is hatching, basically. Yeah. So if you ever have the chance to see this, either the laying the eggs, the mating, or just the egg spirals, even, this is a really good photo opportunity as well. They're often really, really colorful. And if you do ever find it, I recommend that you also take a much closer look on the eggs, because often you can find tiny nudibranchs on top of it, like the favorinos, for example. They like to feed on the eggs of other nudibranchs as well. So yeah, this is a great opportunity for pictures as well. Okay, so the key takeaways from today: get creative. So play around with different angles, techniques, with different compositions, maybe with the background colors, and basically anything that you can think of. Yeah, there's really no limits there. But remember, always remember to be respectful as well. So check the surroundings, if it's safe to approach, if it's also safe to leave the subject again without causing any damage. Remember to control your buoyancy and not touch anything underwater. And be patient as well. You're going to be rewarded for your patience. And the better you know the subject, the better photo opportunities will arise in front of your eyes, basically. So yeah, that was just a little introduction today about macro photography. If you would like to learn more about underwater photography, I have a new online course that is covering all the basics of underwater photography. It's going deeper into macro, wide angle, into lighting. Lighting is the most important thing in underwater photography, learning how to control light, learning how to shoot in manual mode. And the cool thing is that apart from all the theory, you're also going to get practical assignments, so that after the sessions, you can get straight into action with your own camera and learn more. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to tell you more about that. And that was it from my part. So now we have time for questions. Let me just check the chat here. Guys, if you have any questions, you can also unmute yourself. If not, any comments also welcome. Carolyn, how did I start? Well, I started because started to dive because it was raining. Oh, hi, Peter. So it was by pure coincidence, and I always liked also already taking pictures on land. And so somehow this just carried on into the underwater world, and I got really, really addicted. I couldn't stop. Yes, this is how I got started, actually. Did you take a course? I didn't take a course in the beginning. No, it took me a very long time. I thought I would figure everything out by myself, but it took several hundreds of dives. It was a very, very long time until I understood the basics and how to make it work, even though I was already able to take pictures on land. Yeah, I didn't take a course until much, much later, actually.
So I
Peter.
have a few questions. I cannot type that quickly. So
No worries.
First question
Yes.
is really about composition.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you tend to do post-processing wise, as in editing to either crop and zoom, or are you just relying completely on what you're getting out of the camera? That's my first question. And my second question was more about the camera itself, as in when you started and where you are now, and with all of the, I mean, clearly from what you're producing, you're putting an awful lot of effort and research into what you're doing. How has your equipment use changed through that?
All
As
right.
well? So
Yes.
that was 2 questions. I'm going to go on this dinner.
All right, cool. So good luck with the cooking first. Thank you for your questions. So first of all, for the composition, I try to shoot the pictures as well, the best that I can straight from the camera. So I try to leave editing really to a minimum. And sometimes I don't edit at all. Sometimes some cropping, of course, but minimal mostly. And so, yeah, composition wise, I already think about it when I take the picture. And this is what I mean also with taking your time in the beginning and try to visualize also. So you don't always have to rush in to take the picture. I know that it's super exciting if, for example, you find a critter that you've never seen before, and your first reaction might be to just rush in and take the shot as quickly as possible, just so that the fish doesn't swim away. But if you actually take a step back and think about it and think about the composition, look also in the surroundings, how can you compose it to achieve more impact? Maybe which different angle or side can you try to use? Yeah, so that's what I try to do. And then, of course, if there's still something that you want to crop out afterwards in post-processing, or sometimes it's also that you only see afterwards that the result looks very different than what you expected actually, or what you thought it looked like underwater, then yeah. But I try to do it in the beginning while shooting, basically on the dive. Okay, so that was one. I hope that answered your question. And then for the second one, so yeah, so since I started until now, how my equipment use has changed. So so in one way, first I was not aware of the whole lighting situation, and so I started without a strobe. Well, actually, I started first with a GoPro, and I started taking videos. But then it took me a very long time to edit all those videos, and I figured, okay, I'm gonna give photography a try, because then it might be easier or quicker to edit a picture than this whole long video that I just shot. And so I started first without strobes, just with a torch. And I found that quite challenging. And then I started adding one strobe, then the second strobe, and you know how it goes. You start adding more and more equipment. But so I would say I started using, well, now I pay more attention to how I use my strobes. I control them completely manually, and sometimes I will like turn one off or have them at completely different settings. For macro, sometimes I will also only just shoot with one strobe, not with two strobes. And so really I try to pay more attention, or try to use my equipment more intentionally, instead of just shoving it in there and just shooting away and hoping that something will work. Yes. And I like using snoots a lot for macro especially. So with snoots also give you the opportunity to direct the light much more. And I like playing with, with light and shadows and not having everything lit, like all the parts lit from your picture all the time. So yes, I hope that answers your question. Thank you for those questions. Okay, guys, anybody else? Do you have any questions? We still have a few minutes left here. No? Okay. Last chance for questions. Well, actually not, because I'm still going to be around. So if you still... hi, there you are, Peter. Yes.
As in, what do you look for in a dive buddy then? Because I find I probably have a similar journey in that I started off using an action camera and found that, 30 minutes or 40 minutes of footage to try and edit and to find that 8 seconds of wow, just wasn't worth it. And so I've started down just using a compact camera in the housing and so on. But so I'm reluctant to spend more on something about when is it going to flood is what's going on in my head at the moment. But I'm a terrible dive buddy when I've got my camera with me because basically I'm staying in one place and everybody else wants to go off and see everything else that's happening. So, how do you find a photographer working kind of buddy arrangement like that when you're focusing on these really tiny creatures for quite some time to take the patience and so on? What do you look for?
It's a challenge for sure, yes. And that's gonna depend on a number of things, I would say. So it depends where you're diving and what the conditions, I would say, are. So of course the sea conditions as well, but also from the dive operation that you're diving with, for example, and if you have like a permanent buddy or not. So, I'm quite lucky. My partner is also taking pictures, not as much as me. So when he is, it's quite a good combination. And there's some places where it's going to be easier to be surrounded with other photographers, maybe in a group also. Of course, if you have a big dive group, yeah. So if you're diving, I know, some places with like 8 people in the same group. Well, that can be super, super challenging because if people don't have a camera with them, most of the time they tend to dive a little bit faster also, and maybe they will want to go faster than you, and it's easy to lose track of your dive buddy. So if you have another photographer buddy, it's usually quite good. But what I would recommend is also talk to him beforehand and agree on some signals underwater and on some common underwater photographer's etiquette. So for example, if he finds something, he can take some pictures first and then show you the critter so that then you have a chance to shoot that critter as well. And like this, you can be a really good match and, try to watch out for each other. And like this, at least you can make sure that you're going to be diving at least more or less at the same speed. Then in some places, maybe this will not be possible, but maybe then it's worth of getting a private guide. So private guides can be amazing, like an amazing investment, I will say, yeah, because then you have somebody who's really there with you, for you in the water, finding all the critters and finding the next critter for you to shoot while you're still shooting this one nudibranch, for example. So this can be something. And maybe just like if you have a chance, speak to the other divers before, try to find out if you have like common like interest for the subjects, for example. Yes, that can help as well. But for sure, if you have no other photographers and everybody else just wants to rush off, then it's going to be a huge challenge. I know. So, yes. Okay, let me just check the chat again if somebody else wrote something. I don't see any other question. Good point about the professional guide. Yes, and for example, in Indonesia, I don't know where you've been diving before, but in Indonesia, you can often get a private guide, and they're just, I mean, any of the guides, they're mostly spectacular, and they will find, especially for mackerel, the tiniest critters that sometimes you can't even see. So it's really cool. It's worth it having a really good guide that can find all the finding for you. Hi, Sylvia. You entered now, but we're actually at the end of the presentation. But yeah, guys, any more questions? Again, feel free to unmute yourself. And they're interesting about the marine life in the area. Yes, definitely. And also, you know, the guides, they know all the hiding places, basically. And that doesn't mean that, you know, hiding as in tearing out the critter for you, because for sure you should never do that. And also, if you ever see somebody do that, please speak up, please speak to them and tell them that this is not okay. Because of course, sometimes guides will do that because the customers are asking for it, because the customers are asking, for example, for a special critter. But then I think it's also our responsibility to speak up and say that this is not okay, because in the end, the guides, they just want to please the customer, right? So if you see that, please say something, and never do it yourself. Never let your guide do it, because it's the natural world. And I mean, if we don't get to see that critter, it's a shame, but it's the way it is. So yeah, I think that's much more important than getting the perfect shot, you know? So yes. Anything else, guys? Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked them. Hi, Brock. Welcome. Again, we're just at the end of the session, actually. But guys, if you want to say something, unmute yourself. You can come on video as well. I'm happy to stay a few more minutes here and chat with you guys, even if it's just chit-chatting and you don't have any questions. No, everybody's too shy. That's okay. Yes, Simon, I know. I mean, they're just amazing, right? I think you're never going to get to the point that you can see, I've seen them all. So that's also, it's a really good challenge, right? Which resort are you in? I'm currently in no resort. I'm back in Germany in my apartment. So I used to work in North Sulawesi in Siladen Resort, tiny little island in the Bunaken Marine Park. Fantastic diving, fantastic macro life, fantastic wide angle for any divers and underwater photographers. It's heaven, like you can get anything over there. So that's really cool. But right now I'm not. I'm stuck in Germany, so. No, not with Simone, but next to Simone, actually. So Simone is still located on the mainland, and if you take the boat inside the marine park, there's the big island, Bunaken Island, and then right next to it, it's a tiny island, Siladen Island, and this is where my resort was on, or still is. Just I'm not there. Oh wow, 13 species on one dive, Simon. That's pretty good. That's awesome. Yeah, I know. Like I started in the Caribbean, and I mean, I didn't actually really know what a nudie was until I went to Southeast Asia. I was like, nudie? Have I seen that before? And then suddenly in Southeast Asia, it's like they're everywhere in every color and every shape, big, small, anywhere. So, yeah. You're very welcome, guys. Any other questions? Hi, Rachel. Welcome. People keep entering now, but well, that was actually the last session. Well, from my part, thank you, Simon. You too. Yeah, but guys, if you have any other questions, any other comments, I'm still around. You can drop me a message. We can also still video chat. And tomorrow I'm also still going to be there. So, yeah, just let me know. I'm happy to connect. Otherwise, have a great evening, guys. Thank you so much for coming, and don't it's getting late here. Don't forget to show your love for the oceans. Bye, guys. Thank you.